Welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Grandma. It's Kim and my co-host,
Grandma Gail. Kim, I went to a fabulous restaurant last night with some people. Thank heavens we weren't paying because I think I'd have to open a separate checking account. But it's called Le Pavillon. It's down on across from Grand Central Station in this beautiful new building. And packed. It was really, I can't believe people go to these kind of dinners. I mean, we were being taken for a special occasion, but it was jammed with young people, and then some older people, but not many. We were the oldest by far, and the food was beautiful. It was very, very artsy food. Did I love it as much as my favorite little Italian restaurants? No, but each plate was like out of a picture from Paris. It was really quite beautiful, especially the desserts. The dessert chef was amazing. But I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who doesn't have a very, very big bank account, because I think it was several $100s a person. And you wouldn't find this anywhere else but probably Paris. But very nice. And
it sounds romantic.
It was romantic, but of course I was with a 90-year-old, so
Right.
How romantic was that?
Yeah.
What did you do last night?
Last night, I stayed up late editing our episode because one of us works here.
Well, that's good.
And then just ordered in some Greek food.
Oh, I would have liked that better, I think. Mine was just too pretty on the plate, but not that great.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it. Nothing too exciting. I heard one of your friends is engaged now.
Got engaged and she's been going with him, I think, 3 months, and now is engaged with a beautiful
And she's
ring.
around your age.
Well, she's a little younger than I am, and the fellow's much older. So they figure they better not wait for a long engagement.
And yeah, it's
neat.
exciting for them because it shows you can kind of find that.
You can find love
age.
at any time, at any time, which is what we keep saying. Mm-hmm. I think we should get into our guest today.
Yeah, so her name is Sydney Sadick. She is a entertainment correspondent. You've probably seen her on TV before, and if not, check her out on Instagram. She does celebrity interviews. She talks about fashion.
She's very pretty. She's charming.
Yeah, and she grew up in New York City also, so I had a lot in common with her. And she talked a lot about the different power dynamics in dating, which you guys will hear about. She obviously is very ambitious and has a great job, and she kind of described that it was not the easiest to find people who can handle that.
Well, it's intimidating, Kim. Some men are not as confident as others, and I think she tends to like to go with an older gentleman because she feels that they're a little more established. That seems to be somewhat of her opinion. We'll hear more when she tells us.
Yeah, and you were kind of saying to me after that basically everyone you knew, the power dynamic was the other way around, where the man had more of an intense job or was the breadwinner. And I think it's an interesting thing that we're all kind of navigating now, that do you have to find someone the same level as you to feel equal with them?
And also many, many more women have wonderful jobs and are in the same exact position as their male counterparts, which is healthy. But everybody has to figure out how they handle that in their personal relationships.
I mean, I'd honestly be fine just having my job and not being at the same level of someone else, whether they make more money. I wouldn't feel intimidated by that. If anything, I'd be happy about it.
Well, but everybody feels differently, so I think we can't generalize this. Sometimes it's a psychological thing in your mind that you get stuck on, that you feel that you're not equally as successful and therefore can't be as giving in the relationship. It has many ramifications, and it'll be a subject that will be with us certainly for years to come.
Okay, so let's hear what Sydney had to say. So guys, we are joined by Sydney Sadick. She's a TV correspondent and writer. She talks about fashion, celebrity. You may have seen her on the Today Show. Welcome to Excuse My Grandma, Sydney.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So let's just start off with where you live right now and your current relationship status.
Okay, so the living situation is about to change. You're catching me a week ahead of me moving out into my apartment of my own for the very first time. So I'm on the Upper East Side in my mom's home right now. And next week I'm going to be going downtown cool and I'm moving. Yeah. So
Where to?
big
Any
step.
place exciting?
I'll be in the Nomad Flatiron area, so not far from your granddaughter. I'm excited. I've really been living with my family for, almost 2.5 years now with this pandemic. And I'm nervous, but I'm ready because part of it is I'm so sick of everyone being so invasive in my dating life. Everyone wants to know what I'm doing, where I'm going. Are you going to bring us COVID? Like,
Yep.
it's too much pressure.
I know it well.
It'll be great. And the
And
area is terrific down here.
I'm excited. And as for my relationship status, I am technically single.
Okay.
So what do you mean technically? Like you're seeing someone? Are you exclusive?
We get this exclusive business is beyond me.
I mean, I think the exclusive business is such BS, to be honest with you. Like, I recently started seeing someone very, very, very new. I'm not committed to one person. I'm going out with a couple of guys, but I'm dating. Yeah,
right.
I'm dating.
Right. Good.
So while you've been at home dating and all of that, like when you come back from a date, will your family ask you a million questions? And how do you kind of navigate that?
So first of all, we were living in the Hamptons up until this past September, and I was coming into the city a couple days a week. So dating was extremely hard. I did not go out on one date truly for a year. And before COVID, I was traveling to LA and DC all the time for the shows I contribute to. And so I would just go out with the guys who I would meet on the road. I was living a very nomadic lifestyle. And so me going and living, with my mom, which I was still doing before COVID, this was very different because she was super strict and she didn't want to see anybody. Like we were really locked down. And so I felt sort of like I was in this, upscale jail. Yeah, fully. Like I was on house arrest and I wasn't used to not having like the validation and satisfaction of connecting with a guy. And so I was like really in a bad funk for a while, and not just for that, for career reasons, for so many different things. But eventually I started going out with someone last March of 2021. And I made this guy sit with me on a bench in Central Park in the middle of winter for months. That was all we did. And so at that point, I think my mother was still anxious, but I'm like, I'm not even near the guy. I'm not even touching the guy. And now as things have progressed and
People are more relaxed.
vaccinations, a little, but like, it's still like, we don't really talk about it as much. I'm sort of just like, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm being safe. I'm not stupid.
Good
I'm
girl.
moving out in a week. Like,
then all bets are off. No.
It's funny.
Correct.
I was never worried about Kimberly.
Yeah.
And she
I
dated like crazy during COVID, but I mean, you were careful.
Really?
You were outside.
Yes, I only
Mostly.
did outside. And I think if you got vaccinated pretty early, first of all. when
I was
living with you.
vaccinated in December. Yeah, I was but I really wasn't worried. I never felt that you were going to give it to me.
Yeah, I definitely felt guilty sometimes.
Yeah, I know you did.
You would be like, go to bars and do this and because we're in Florida where like there's no rules. But overall, I think I was pretty careful, and it's a little bit different than your story, Sydney. I feel like when I would come back, it was like full debrief mode.
Yes, I had to know everything.
Yeah.
I had to know everything. I wanted to know what he ate for dinner, how he moved his napkin around. I wanted to know the whole thing.
Also when I was getting dressed and stuff, you were like, did he like the outfit?
oh, well, clearly what I've learned from this is that the anxiety in my house is a lot more intense than in your house.
Yeah, there was no anxiety in our house. And unless you were talking to her mom. Her mom was very, very anxious. That's why she didn't live with her. She lived with me.
Yeah.
And that's why I really wish, honestly, my grandparents were around, because I feel like that just would have probably been a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. But what you said too, the Jewish guilt part, you didn't say Jewish.
Right.
I'm saying the Jewish part. That is what I felt. And that was more terrifying than the thought of getting COVID. It was really
that you'd bring it into your home.
Wrong. Yeah.
Well, does your mom have an underlying condition, or she's just nervous?
She doesn't. She's nervous.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
everybody
I get
is
it.
dealing
I
with
am.
this differently. Everybody is
Totally.
dealing with this COVID differently, and you have to respect everyth's barriers and boundaries. It's nothing is right and nothing is wrong.
Yeah.
That's why I talk about dating with my dad. He's more,
Okay,
he's more relaxed.
Really? I feel like sometimes dads can be a little bit more critical.
My father and I have a very unique bond where I can talk to him more about those types of topics than my mother. And I know many people don't relate to that, but
I was
he
like
is
that.
into it. Really?
Yep. I never could talk to my mother. I can always talk to my father.
It's so strange. And he gives me the best advice. Can't take a word of career advice from him. That's all my mom. But when it comes to dating,
All right.
it's all him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
And you
works.
were close with your grandparents as well.
Oh my God, beyond. When I see you and your grandmother here, like it is the most precious, special relationship.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
my grandmother, I never met my dad's mom. She passed when he was 17 years old. My mother's mom had frontal lobe dementia. So for, almost 20 years, she really couldn't communicate or walk. But out of all of the 6 grandchildren, I was the only one who really knew her when she was well. So I was super beyond close with her as a young individual, but my grandfathers were really the 2 people in my life who I told everything to, trusted everything. And I lost all 3 of my grandparents, my grandmother and my 2 grandfathers, within the same year of each other
Oh my gosh.
3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Tragic.
That's
And
tragic.
so
That's terrible.
when you have that kind of loss, I think it changes your perspective on dating and what you really want in your life. Like my dad always says, Sydney, you need a mensch in your life who was as menschy as your grandfather's and someone who has the spunk of your grandma. And he's right.
All right.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
That's cool. That's great. That's really good.
Did they ever give you any advice about dating?
My grandfather, 4 years ago, he was living with us. My mom and I were taking care of him and my brother. And he would see me coming back on dates with someone. It was a man who was a bit older. And he was like, why do you want to be with an old man? Forget it.
He's right, because everybody gets old and then you're stuck. So this way you date somebody your own age or a few years older. It's much healthier.
Not your own age, though.
Well, it could be your own age.
You always say to me, like, do
Well, you
not
need
date
you
anyone
need a
under
few
27,
Yeah.
28.
Well,
How old are
that
you?
would be.
I'm 25.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just I've been working since I was 16 years old. I grew up like you in the city, but I was always exposed to people who are much older than me. And with that, you know yourself differently than I think than a guy who might just be, trying to get his job situation figured out. They feel so much financial pressure, I think, on a way different level than I see with women. To be honest with you, I see it. It's very different, the pressure they put on themselves. And I think what the difference is women, they like to have someone by their side as they are, going through the trenches of going through their career. But men can be very, self-isolating if they feel that their work isn't in tip-top shape. I see that at least.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like for me, I never understood when guys were like, I'm too busy for a relationship or I want to focus on work, like those excuses that you hear. Because for me, I feel like I could be, really into work and putting my all into that and also balance a
Still
relationship.
have a relationship. I think you should.
Yeah. I don't get like why it's mutually exclusive.
I had an issue with this exact sort of, line with the guy who I was making sit on the park bench for a while. He has health issues, the work. I think you learn to realize that not everyone is going to be as adaptable and we can't make people operate the way we do. Like just because I would adjust and like you said, do whatever it takes to make something work. Not every man wants to do that.
Yeah.
And you want someone who wants to do it with you, obviously.
Or that doesn't need to work on it. That just a good partnership.
And
yeah, there's a lot of narcissism.
You obviously are extremely ambitious. As you said, you started working when you were 16. Do you think that any guys that you've dated are sort of intimidated by that? / do you think that anyone is kind of attracted to the girl boss type and goes toward it?
It's an interesting question. I would say more so intimidated. And then the few who are attracted to it and it doesn't scare them are, the diamonds in the rough. Like, I really believe that the guys my age just can't take it. There was a guy who, for the first time, who I really tried to be with, who was in his 20s, age appropriate. We worked in the same business. And I just felt like he couldn't
handle your
deal
success.
with it.
Well,
I think
then
it
you gotta
really
go
bothered
move
him.
on. Move on.
Completely.
It's so easy for you to say that. You're always like, move on, next.
Move on, because you know what? You don't only in this day and age today, you girls all have careers and are successful. You can't waste your time with somebody who can't deal with that. It's because they're never going to get to the level where they understand where you're going. So you got to go with a more mature, self-confident man, and because you need that in your life. You don't need somebody you're going to have to constantly stroke. I mean, that's too and too debilitating to your emotional health at this point in your lives.
But connecting with the career is the financial, right? Like this guy would see that I was going to Mr. Chow, eating at top restaurants, Abra, and I can understand how that could be intimidating to someone who really doesn't have the means to do that every single week. But this is the point where I think a lot of guys go wrong. I think they assume that women are always looking for the man to just take care of them. And I'm like, yeah, I go to these places with my girlfriends, my family, but that doesn't mean I need you to take me out for these meals. If it's someone who I genuinely enjoy and I find could really be a partner, it's not about money at that point. Let's just be together and get to know each other. And I really think money, even when it's not said, comes between so many new young couples all the time.
We discussed this with our divorce attorney last week. I still think that's the money and sex are the two primary things in every relationship. And if you don't have the money, you're always fighting. And if you don't have good sex, there's no marriage. When you get especially when you're young. When you're older, you don't care about the sex. You still care about the money.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the third thing to add to that list is just this idea that, especially in New York, I think these guys, they think there's always something greater and shinier and more available and less, emotional. I think they always know there's so many options. And so the pool is just so wide. And as women, we have less to select from just based on the lack of men in the general population, right? But I don't like this idea on apps where you don't know how many people someone is talking to. And that makes me very guarded and more guarded as I get older. I can feel it.
That's so interesting because I think that's a very common thing people are feeling. But I feel like I resonate a little bit more with the men of like, there's a million options. Like, why should I just date one person? And it's a really slippery slope because then you never want to commit to anybody. What are your feelings overall with dating apps?
I am on them. So I feel like I'm the queen of browsing and not acting on many of my matches. So I am on a variety of them. And sometimes I delete some and I do this little rotation thing. I would say the app that I have had the most success in terms of actually dating someone for a period of time, but the relationship's actually not going anywhere was Bumble. And I think Bumble really attracts the guy who is unsure of where they are in life.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think they're looking for relationships. I think they are guys who really don't want to make initiative. They want the women to really take the lead. And that goes as far as starting with, being the one to have to reach out on the app. But there's something to be said about a guy who wants the woman to take that first step. They don't want to chase you. They want to feel validated themselves. I don't like that anymore. Second app.
Good for you.
But the app now that I'm starting to find is probably the best, and I'm sure you would probably agree with this, but I never really was into it, was Hinge. The guy who I met on Hinge, I'm actually going to visit in LA next week, and I've never visited any man. I've never traveled for anyone.
Is he flying you out, or you're like buying a ticket and going to see him?
No, I said I'm doing it myself. I was invited to stay with him. I said, no, I'm going to do it, stay at a hotel, do it my way. I don't want to put that pressure on it.
Yeah. Have you ever met? Have you met him?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
We met. Yes. He's back and forth. So now it's my time to, I guess, visit. But yeah, my point is like, I feel like that would have not happened on any other app. And I feel like being on Hinge, I could tell he's more serious and that his profile, for example, was more in depth than a lot of the other profiles I see on Bumble or Raya. They don't describe themselves enough. They're just like pictures.
Yeah. Do a lot of guys also like slide into your DMs, and how do you kind of navigate that since you are a public presence?
Listen, I get every day I'm deleting over 100 DMs and they're all from men.
Wow.
In my requests. It's a lot. Lots of them are, do you want to be my sugar baby?
Yeah, well,
I love you. I see you on the street in New York, whatever. Like it gets weird. It gets very weird. There are some who have reached out who really seem like quality people who are just like, I genuinely respect what you're doing. And I think we'd have a lot in common. That's happened. I've never actually taken someone up on that.
I think it's scary. I mean, you don't know where these people are coming from.
But it's really not that different from a dating app.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because you can see your mutual friends if you have any.
Oh, I see.
I slid into the DMs of one man once a couple years ago, and he was someone known. And I knew we had a mutual, like we crossed paths at some point. So I just put myself out there. We went out like many times. And I was proud of myself for doing that.
Yeah. Honestly, you have to shoot your shot. We've learned that.
Okay.
No, I was just curious your Grandma Gail's perspective on the woman, you know, being ever the one to reach out, because sometimes, like, especially at the beginning stages of when you are going out with someone, I think the guy does expect you to put a little bit of effort in. And I know in my house, everyone's like, never text the guy, never text the guy. What is your thought?
No, we've discussed this a lot. I don't agree that women should reach out. I think I believe the man has to be the chaser. And if once you take that away from a man, it's not going to work. But you know, it's a different time, and people, like you say, want to go on these apps, and they do want to reach out. My preference for my granddaughter or for you would be not to do that, to meet somebody who you got set up by a mutual friend or a family relative or something. But there's some really wonderful relationships that come out of these dating apps, and you know, you just hope for the best. I like to know somewhere in the circle of life that you sort of knew somebody in that circle prior to going out with them. And in this world today, it just makes me very nervous. We didn't have such a wide range to pick from when I was dating, which was in the prehistoric ages.
It was so much easier then.
It was easier, but it wasn't we didn't have as much sophistication in the dating. I mean, it was a very limited pool of which you chose from, and that was fine. You know, you didn't always look, like you say, we didn't look for a better one down the road. We stuck with what we knew. It's very different today, and probably for the better.
Is there ever something, Sydney, that a guy would do on a date that you would be like, I am never, ever seeing this man again?
I've been really lucky where guys, I think, really put their best foot forward with me. Maybe it's because they know that whatever they see on Instagram or TV, I think they try to like turn it up. But it, like my girlfriend, she just went on a date last night. She goes, Sydney, she goes, he stepped away from the table and for 15 minutes had me waiting there to take a business call. And I was, you know, he was on the phone and I'm just there. If a guy did that to me, I would say, obviously, this is not a priority to you. Good night. And I'd leave. And I've left a few dates just when I felt like, you know what, it's past an hour. This is not for me. And I would be honest, because I think that life really is short. And if you really don't feel like you want to be there with someone, leave.
And I think there's a line too, like, as you were saying, when guys come and they want to like bring the energy and whatever, because they see that from you and your job. I remember there's lots of, I was a reporter as well, and I now have this podcast. I feel like when I was dating a lot, there was guys who first date, they would talk all about the podcast and I'd be like, this is so great. They're interested in what I do. Second date, still about the podcast. Third date, still about the podcast. And you're like, can we talk about anything else? It was very frustrating because it's
they didn't have much to talk about in their own lives. So they attached.
That's the problem. That's what it is.
You have to get an interesting partner who has an interesting life so you can share stories. If it's all one-sided on both sides, it's boring. And then it's no good.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, you know what I'm always really surprised by is that so many guys who I go out with, they'll say, you know, women really don't ask me as many questions, and you're making me realize that they don't really ask about me. And I think when I'm with guys, I let them ask me first, but I really come back with actual questions. And it's not in an interviewee way. It's more just like, I want to really know the essence of this person. You have nothing to lose but to just be yourself. And I think I used to be so nervous about showing that I'm from the Upper East Side, that, you know, we are privileged, that I go to these places. And now I'm just like, this is what it is. You either want in or you don't.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of the reason why I'm attracted to this guy who lives in LA, because he likes doing the same things that I do. And it's like no issue at all. It's actually a bonus.
Right.
And so I think if you really prioritize what you want and are putting the thresholds at being like, you know what, if you don't want me for who I am, that's fine. Thank you. Next. Bye, Felicia.
Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about fashion. What are some go-to date night outfits that you could think of?
Yeah,
And
especially after COVID, we need some new outfits. We can't
Oh.
stand this. I mean, the sweatsuits have had it.
like,
We're
I don't
throwing
even know
those
what's
out.
cool anymore.
First of all, you're talking to the girl who was wearing high heels all throughout COVID for just walking around my house because it made me feel more like myself. Really, I feel like fashion is just not as trend driven anymore. It's more about celebrating individuality and what makes you feel confident. And I feel like we're not looking on Vogue.com as much about, okay, this is what we're seeing this season. I think date night is really, especially on your first date, a moment to not scare the guy with so much going on. You want them to recognize you for you and not for labels, not for, something so crazy. So I usually like to wear a pair of leather pants or leggings, which some might say are a lot, but for me, I think they're sexy, and it's still a black pant. With just, a really cute little blouse or crop sweater. I love a statement hoop earring, which you can see under my hair. I love a heel. I don't wear handbags that, scream designer like Gucci or Chanel. I think Bottega is like
That's
a brand,
date
for
two.
example.
No, I'm kidding.
That's date two. But Bottega is like a brand where the guys don't really get it.
So funny.
You know
We say the
mean?
same thing all the time. Like,
Labels aren't showing.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I just think though that keep it a little bit more low key. You don't have to pull out all the stops. Do not wear a dress on a first date ever, is my piece of advice.
Oh, how come?
I just think it's giving off the vibe that like you're really trying hard and that you really want to look like you put a lot of effort in. And I think there's something to be said about being like, okay, you're not my priority tonight. I had other things going on. I'm coming from somewhere. Maybe I'm going somewhere. Why do they deserve for you to get all dressed up for them? Like, let that be the buildup of date 2 or 3.
That's so funny.
Very good. I like this.
I've never thought about that. Like that the dress is showing all your cards in a way.
Well,
they have to earn the dress.
Yeah.
earn the dress. This is a new phrase.
Earn the dress. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Can we talk a little bit about what's going on right now in the world of entertainment? I see all these celebrity couples all the time. We were just saying
Ben Affleck and it was just in
J-Lo.
the paper this morning, and
And
J-Lo were
J-Lo
they were kissing somewhere on the Lower East Side.
Yeah.
So can you catch our listeners up on some of the hot topics right now?
Yeah. So Jen and Ben 2.0, people are absolutely fascinated by them. I don't know if you guys heard the news, but they actually don't follow each other on Instagram.
Why do you
that
think?
is strange. I've talked to so many people about this. My personal opinion is that Ben probably does not run his Instagram account. Someone does it for him.
Yeah.
J-Lo, I think, is on her phone all the time. And I feel like maybe since he didn't initiate the follow, she's not going to be the first one to do it. Like, I don't think she wants to be the one at this point of her life to initiate anything with the men after the way that A-Rod treated her.
I think not following each other is more of a mind game than just following each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's
They need to follow each other. They're with each other all the time.
because it's
But
like
it's weird. Like, why not do it? There's no downfall of not following. They're very
They have
calculated.
to put
I
away
think
their
they also like
phones.
people to
Maybe,
talk.
maybe they need to put their phones away for 5 minutes. Maybe that's their
they're
reason.
celebrities. They thrive off of
All right.
this.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a very calculated couple. I think, Ben was seen going into Tiffany's, looking at wedding rings. I mean, like, I just don't feel the authenticity factor with these two. It feels like recycled goods,
Right.
and I'm not about recycling when it comes to dating.
Yeah. Is there a celebrity couple that you think is very authentic?
I really am enjoying Sharna Burgess from Dancing with the Stars and Brian Austin Green, who was married to Megan Fox. I really just watching them on Dancing with the Stars the last 2 weeks. I think you can really tell how people feel about each other when they're dancing or when they're doing something together. And there is such an organic connection between these two. I want someone to look at me the way Brian Austin Green looks at Sharna. Yeah.
You'll get somebody, believe me.
I want to end the episode with a quick round of Grandma Gail's red and green flag quiz with you, Sydney. So the first one on our list is a guy asks you out but tells you to pick the place. Is that a red flag or a green flag?
Green.
Green, what do you think?
Yeah, I think green. I agree.
But like not all the time. Like the bench man, he's definitely going to listen to this podcast. This just is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He would have me choose like for the first like 6 dates. And finally that last time I saw him, I said, pick the goddamn place. Just like pick. I don't care where we go. We can go to McDonald's, pick the place.
Right.
I think they should always pick the place. I mean, unless you've been dating for a really long time. Okay, number 2. A guy DMs you on Instagram and tells you you're hot and wants to take you out. Red or green? We kind of talked about this.
No, red for me.
Red.
Yeah, good. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay. A guy picks up the dinner bill, but you pay for your Uber home. Red or green?
Is he in the cab?
No. He's like, okay, bye. And you go home. Does he have to pay for the cab or the Uber?
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
No.
Yeah.
You could walk.
Well, it depends where you live.
He should walk you home.
Yeah.
He should. That's
walk
another
you
thing. If
home.
you're in the neighborhood, he should say, let me walk you home.
What if you're far away and he lives near the spot that you went?
Well, then if you get in the Uber, you pay with your account.
But should he still walk you home if it's extremely out of his way?
Yeah. Why not? What else has he got to do unless he's picking up another date?
Fair.
Exactly.
Okay. A guy used to date your good friend. Red or green flag?
Red.
I go against that. I say green. I don't think if he used to date and it's no longer a dating issue, you can date the friend. I mean,
You don't
I
believe
just
in
think
girl
it's
code.
awkward. I
I know
Not
that's
even-
what Kimberly thinks too, but I think that's ridiculous. You eliminate 1 million people because maybe your friend went out with him 20 years ago or 10 years ago or in college. I mean,
if it's one date, but I think if they're consistently, like they went out on like 6 to 8 dates, it's like, unless there's something really special, if you're just going out because it's easy and whatever, I think it's not even worth it.
I agree.
Okay.
There's so
My
many
opinion.
men in the world. Like, why are you going after the one your friend dated?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. It's not, it depends how current it was.
Yeah.
If
Right.
it was somebody years ago and you run into this man and you say, hi, I remember you from college,
Fine.
you dated so-and-so, there's nothing wrong with
That was like Lindsay. That's
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a circumstance. If it happened 2 weeks ago, naturally I wouldn't go out with him.
Yeah, it's all subjective.
Right.
Mhm. Last one. You know the guy's a player, but he said he's changed. He's different now. Red or green flag?
I know it's a red flag. I've done it, so I've made it a green. The old me would say green flag. The new me would say red flag.
I like
I think red flag, nobody changes their spots.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
unfortunately,
what is it? A leopard
Right.
never changes. its
leopard never
spots or
changes their
something?
spots.
That's it.
Sydney, this has been so fun. Thank you
I
so much for
know.
joining us. Can you tell our listeners how they can follow you and catch up with you on what's next in your life?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Sydney Sadick. Catch up on Lunchtime with Sydney, my Instagram live show. There's Aim High the book, and that's it.
Terrific,
Amazing.
Sydney.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
wonderful trip,
much.
and we loved speaking to you.
I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Sydney. So I wanted to get to some listener questions. We got a bunch today. I don't think we're going to have time in the episode, but a lot of people wrote in asking about Grandma Gail's thoughts on ghosting. We did do an episode about this a little while back, but maybe everyone wants a refresher. So Grandma, what are your thoughts on ghosting? When somebody kind of stopped responding to you without any explanation.
I think I'm sort of against ghosting because I think it's really a dishonest way of ending a relationship. I said, if you've been out for a couple of times and you've enjoyed each other's company, at least you thought you enjoyed each other's company, and all of a sudden somebody is not responding to you, I think the way to go about is to text them and say, listen, I think that something is wrong. I'd love to talk to you or speak to you or text you about it, and just square it away. And if we're not good together, that's just fine. But one way or the other, I just would like an answer. Then if you don't get an answer, then just forget it. Then definitely ghost him if he responds. You have to give him a couple of days though, because sometimes people don't look at their phone every single second of the day. But I think if the whole idea of ghosting, I find not very pleasant.
So after how many dates do you owe somebody an explanation of I don't want to see them anymore?
Oh,
Do
it would
you
have to be more. It would have to be several times. You can't after 2 dates.
You don't have to say
can't- I
anything.
think that's ridiculous. That's unnecessary. You haven't formed a relationship. And especially if you haven't had a sexual relationship. If it's strictly dinner or a cocktail and sitting around a bar and watching a television program and watching some sports night in a sports bar, I don't think that's a relationship. But if you feel that you've gotten to the point where, yes, you are going out and you also have been intimate, I think then you owe somebody an explanation. And if they're ghosting
And what
you,
is a good explanation? Because like there's the cliches that people often say because they don't want to hurt people's feelings of work is busy, I'm not over my ex. Like, what's the best thing to say without really hurting someone's feelings?
Well, sometimes somebody has to be hurt. I mean,
yeah, but you're not going to be like, I just thought you were boring and ugly. Like,
no, I don't think that's
honest.
ever appropriate.
Right.
But I think you have to say honestly, we've been going out. Unfortunately, it's just not working for me. And I hope, you don't have any bad feelings towards me, but I can't see you anymore. And be honest. I mean, the worst thing is to lie because you always get caught in a lie. So it's better off laying it out in person. This isn't where I want to be at this particular moment in time. And have please forgive me and get on with our lives.
Okay, let's move on to our 1950s movie of the week. This week, we're going to do I Love Melvin with Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor.
Well, that should be a fun one.
Really fun movie. One of the first 50s movies I think I actually saw. And they meet on a park bench. Very similar to what Sydney was saying about the guy she met on a park bench. Or she didn't meet him on a park bench, but they
used to go out on dates
yes.
And somehow ended up on a park bench.
Yeah. Although when I was dating the guy and we went on a park bench, you were very against that.
Well, after a while, that was during COVID and everybody was outside. But after a while, how many park benches can you sit on?
Fair.
Okay. That sounds great, Kim.
Okay, so another great episode of Excuse My Grandma. You know how to follow us. Instagram, TikTok, both at Excuse My Grandma. And send us any of your questions. Direct message me. You can also follow me on my personal Instagram at Kim Merstein. So we will see you next week.
Okay. Bye, Kim.